My psychosis symptoms, like I said, consist of hallucinations that can be feeling on my skin, on my body. It can be seeing things that aren't there. It could be hearing things that aren't really there. So, I mean, I've had a couple different things. I've had a delusion mixed with a psychotic episode. I had a cat who I was like, every time I looked at the cat, she just like would look at me with these intense eyes. And I'm like, can you understand me? And I heard her speak. And yeah, I thought she could speak to me. And I heard her speak. And I just couldn't make out what she said. But I heard her speak and I heard her voice. And I said, wow, you can understand me and we can speak to each other. And then she ran away. And I'm like, I sort of broke out of it at that moment, but I was like, every time I saw her, I felt some type of weird inclination to just go and ask her if we could speak to each other. Um, I don't have the cat anymore. We had to give her up, but she's thankfully in a good, happy family now. But anyway, it was one of those situations where it wasn't necessarily harmful or scary that I could hear my cat speak to me, but it was a delusion mixed with a psychotic episode. Um, and it's one of those things that's like, once again, just be open and honest to your care team and just understand when things go out of hand and so that they can just track it. Because one day, who knows, maybe my cat could have told me, hey, you got to do this thing, or hey, go do this bad thing. And then that would have been a problem, right? So I need to be able to tell my care team, hey, my cat spoke to me, and so they can keep monitoring that, so they can keep track of it. Hey, what did your cat say today? Did they speak to you today? Things like that. Um, so another time I had this episode where one of my hallucinations are these little black specks that look like spiders, right? And now I've always had the hallucination of like things crawling on me or like a spider crawling on me whenever I see something that like creeps me out or grosses me out like an animal. I always feel like this crawly sensation on me, especially insects, and bugs and things like that. So um one day I was really really anxious, and I was sitting on my bed, and then suddenly I saw one of that black specks, like little spider. And I said, okay, I'm seeing things fine. Whatever, I'm gonna ignore it. Then I saw another one, and then I saw another one. And then suddenly the entire floor in my room was covered in them. And then suddenly they were crawling up my leg, and suddenly they were on my bed and on me and everywhere. And I was freaking out. Um, and it was not fun. I had a whole panic attack. Somehow I managed to break back into reality and realize that there was nothing there, but I was still really heightened in my emotions. I was able to talk to my fiance and, calm down a little bit, but, you know, um, that's one of them. I had my scariest one, and this is still sort of like it's not really ongoing because I was able to, like, my medicine being raised helped sort of calm it down, but I still can't like look at scary things because it reminds me of this psychotic episode. So um I there was a time, not a time. So when I go to sleep, I actually can't have a regular bed with the underside, because I get freaked out about a being under my bed who's going to grab at my ankles. Now, that's sort of a normal thing. I feel like a lot of people tend to have that, from childhood. They're like, "Oh, something on your bed, the boogeyman," things like that, right? But this one spreads more because it's three beings in different parts of my room. So one is under the bed, the other one is in a corner up on the ceiling, and then the other one is hovering over me. And so there's these like, so they're in like black cloaks and they have like no faces and it's just white and but they have these big crawly hands, like really long fingers. It almost reminds me, honestly speaking, it freaked me out when oh, I'm forgetting the name of that that guy. There was in like 2014-ish, 2010s, there was like this uh character with there was a game that had a character who was really tall and had no face. Um and you were like in a forest and then it would like you would have to hide from it and stuff like that. If anyone can find the name of it, please comment it so that, others can understand what this is and can get the reference of it. It reminded me of that. And when I saw it, I was like, oh, this is something that looks exactly like what I've had happening to me for a very long time, and I never put a real image, like I never could explain properly to other people how it looked until that came out, and I was able to say, yeah, it kind of looks like that, but with a cloak, you know? Um, yeah, it's the most freakiest thing. But so there's three of them, and I actually ended up having to get a bed without an underside. Like it just has drawers now. Yeah, at my age, right? Um, but it's a way to cope. It's a way to just take one more, take one less thing and just throw it out, just not have to worry about it, right? But yeah, so then that thing, so now there's not one under my bed, but it is like just standing off to the side in like another corner of the room, just staring at me really angry because I took away its home. And so yeah, it's really creepy when you turn around and you open your eyes and you see these beings just staring at you. And when I turn around, I'm like, I can't turn around because I'm going to see them. And I feel really scared and terrified. And it got so bad that I ended up with a whole psychotic break. I mean, really, really terrible. I couldn't sleep in this happened in 2021. I couldn't sleep in my bed because it was just so scary to be in my room. And by the time that I got my medicine upped and things were better, I still had some residual anxiety about being in my room. So I ended up with a nightlight and that helped a little bit. But then I said, you know what? I can't, I'm like in my late 20s. I can't be sleeping with a nightlight. Now, there's nothing to say about you guys. If you want to sleep with a nightlight, go ahead. Um, it's just me. It's just for me, I feel like I can't enable myself to uh get handicaps because I feel like I'm just gonna make things worse when I go into a place that doesn't have a nightlight. If I sleep with my partner, now I have to have a nightlight. Like that's a problem because my partner doesn't like the light in the room. So, um, I just said, okay, I'm not going to sleep with a nightlight anymore, but my medication has to be adjusted to the point where I feel safe enough to sleep in my room without a nightlight. I did that. Um, it's been good so far. I am feeling a little bit like the more stressed I get, the more it starts coming back. But then when I get okay, like the stress dies down, then it sort of gets okay again. And that's another thing. We have to have stress management because we're constantly stressed by all the things that we see, hear, feel, the delusions, everything. It's really hard when you break with reality and don't understand like why is this happening and and other people just don't get how scary it can be, right? Um, so on top of being honest with your care team, being honest with your psychiatrist when to know to up your medicine, when you're doing better, just think back and be like, hey, yeah, this stuff happened. Uh, yeah. But anyway, let's see, another thing, another psychosis. I have my auditory hallucination, where I feel like at night, even when everyone's dead asleep, um, that there's TVs on. Like I can hear a TV somewhere in the distance just blasting. And I'd never figure out what that is. I actually think it has to do with my mom sleeping when I was younger, like much younger. She always had the TV on when I was trying to sleep, and I think that just stayed in my head or something. I'm not really sure. But I also have like a soundtrack that happens like throughout my day. Like there is never a dull moment in my head. I There isn't like a quiet moment, you know? I always have a soundtrack in my head. Like, oh, I actually, when I was younger, thought everyone could hear the same music that I was hearing. And mind you, this music does not exist. Sometimes it's like, you get your earworms, but this music does not exist. It's just random music that just plays. And I thought people could hear it too. And apparently they can't. So, yeah. But I mean, going into before I got diagnosed, the things that I used to experience, that I thought it was normal, but they weren't. Um, like I'd experience in my house, when I was growing up, there was a story that a family had passed away in that house, and that um there were ghosts. And so for me, it's like I guess that kind of fueled some of the things, but I used to see things, I used to hear things every single night. I used to hear, when everyone was asleep, I used to hear plates moving around and clanking, and cups, and everything just moving around. I used to hear these like owls. There's a specific type of bird that does like that owly sound. Um, and I would hear one of those birds inside of the house, but there were no birds. We had birds, but they were not those type of birds. I would feel things like somebody touch me, or somebody passed by me. Like when someone passes by you and you feel that wind, or you feel like the air changes, I felt that. Um, there were just so many different things that when I was younger I would experience that other people didn't experience, and I would tell them about this, and they're like, "Oh my God, it must be the ghosts. It must be the ghosts." And I'm like, "Okay." Um, that's interesting. Um, and yeah, so as I grew older, I would, as I said, experience that whole song in my head thing. Eventually realized nobody else hears that. Um, as I grew older, things just kept happening like that. Like I would see things from the corner of my eye. I would think that I saw a shadow. I would think that I saw literally what I some people would explain as a ghostly figure. I would think that when I'm out by myself, I would see something in the corner of my eye hiding and just staring at me, and I would be really scared and think that someone was following me home. Um, Now this was all before I was, um, this was still like high school age, or younger. Um, when I was in college and by myself, um, honestly, I think I was feeling more depression at that time, and just wasn't really, at that time, I was normal. I was used to seeing things from the corner of my eye or feeling things at that point. So I thought it was all normal for me to experience that, and I never attributed it to something else. Um, I just always thought it was what people experience, and apparently that's not true. Um, But yeah, and then after getting diagnosed, now I can understand better and sort of identify when I'm not in my right mind. Sometimes I can't. Sometimes, like I said, with that delusion of the US nuking a country or something, like I really thought I could tell the future. I really thought that that was something that was going to happen and that we had to be careful, and I was really, really scared. Um, Especially because it kept getting fueled by my family. So in those instances, sometimes I can't tell until after the episode is over. Um, but it doesn't happen often, thankfully. And usually, if it lasts longer than a couple of days or a day or two, I do end up in a psychotic break. So then at that point, I have to get the help of, let's say, like my fiance, and he has to be like, hey, you need to talk to your psychiatrist and you need to up your medicine. And I'm like, okay. Um, we are not professionals. We are not psychologists, therapists, psychiatrists, et cetera, et cetera. Um, do not self-diagnose. Do not think that, oh, what's happening to me is a delusion. Unless you are certain that it's a delusion, unless you're like, this is so far out there that, it's definitely not based on reality. Just there's certain things that you can tell, oh, this is a delusion. I'm paranoid about it. I keep thinking about it and it's not based on fact. Um, Now, when you're in that moment, it's really hard to tell. When you're outside of that moment, it's very easy to tell. Um, but yeah, literally, just reflect on yourself. But anything you do, talk to your care team, talk to your loved ones, talk to your support system, um, and really identify that if your loved ones are fueling and making you feel worse, to try and distance yourself when it comes to mental health in that aspect. Do not let them fuel your delusions or psychosis or mood symptoms. Do not let them think that, oh, you just have a gift and that you're special and that this is normal, because it's not, and it can get ugly very quickly. And, you don't want to mess with breaking with reality. You don't. Um, you want to be medicated. You want to be with a good care team, and you want to make sure that everyone is on the same page and that, you know, you have something in place when a plan in place when something happens, when you break with reality and you're not able to make decisions on your own or good decisions on your own. So I hope this helps. And if your care team is not cutting it, is not doing good, is not, you know, being there for you, then you'll need to find a better care team. I mean, I can't stress how important a care team is when you have schizoaffective or schizophrenia or bipolar or anything that can cause you to break with reality.